the philosophy was where both of us aligned, and on that conversation when we aligned, it's because we're both dreamers. We're both philosophically minded, and we're both thinking that this technology is super powerful. So what we bonded on was how far can we take this? How far can we take technology, and how far can we take impact? So we recognized that at that time NFTs were, to be honest, pretty pictures. And there's nothing wrong with pretty pictures. It's wonderful. It's really good. It's very interesting. And it's a use case of the technology. We were like, okay, what if we took pretty pictures and we made them video? And what if we made video that could change? What if we made this evolve? What if it wasn't just a static object? What if it was a game object? What if you could play with it? What if it was a toy? And this was like the foundation for us in multiple different ways. What if instead of thinking about NFTs as something that you own, what if it was something that you could play with? Like the idea of Montessori, that you can engage with something, you could learn, you can develop, and there's no limitation really on a digital toy. And I think about like, like many of our colleagues have kids. They have to buy a new toy for their kid like every 2 weeks once the kid hits like 5, and then old toy goes into the side. So the idea for toys that never got old was this idea that you could play with something and it can engage, and it could also play back with you, or it could evolve as you played with it. That was the first realm where we started to think, how far can we push the technology? But on the other side, we were like, well, how far can we push the impact? When Lucy and I started talking about this idea, we were thinking about endangered species and animals and aligning it towards protected habitats in Africa. But then, and I won't steal this year's thunder here. She introduced the concept of doing this for the rainforest, and she'll explain why in a second. And we thought, okay, how can you take this same gamification, this evolution, this tangibility, and translate that into real world impact, but not just real world impact one way. How can you make that a mutual conversation? Not which is what happens in traditional charities so far because of the limitations of technology. It's donation, impact, cool. How can we make this attached, where there's a two-way conversation going? What does Web3 offer to allow impact to no longer become a one-time engagement, but become a continuous conversation? And that was the birth of what has become the Eternals. But like, I think before I hand over to Lucia, I have to say that's where we started. Then 28 other people joined us and decided on adding their particular skills, their particular values, their particular thoughts, and their ideas. And that's when it really blossomed into what it is today. But I'll hand over to Lucia to give you a little bit more specifics and talk about that.
Please.
Yeah, I think to add on to what you're saying, some of the early questions that were particularly fascinating around impact are also this idea that, like, essentially, impact as it stands right now, it's very hard to make it an investable asset class, right? Like, you're looking, and I feel like people across YPO will understand that because there's so much interest in investing in like ESG associated frameworks, or investing in initiatives that will ultimately have a good social return on investment, but it's been so hard to like measure, so hard to quantify, so hard to really see the return. And so I think for us it was really this question of like, impact needs to be a core component of the utility of this type of financial instrument, so that it's not, as Shaun described, a passive outcome of saying we're going to donate X percentage to a charity, which like we do and like we celebrate for sure, but also the fact that like impact itself becomes so meaningful to the core utility of this instrument, that impact itself becomes like an asset class that you want to invest in. And that to us was really important, because that's really showcasing the potential of the connection between this type of technology, the connection between economic incentives and financial instruments in the decentralized space, toward impact and a more viable and sustainable future. And the other question that I think was very interesting, that was maybe a little after these original questions, was this concept of like financial sovereignty. Like, we as an industry, we preach financial empowerment and like distribution of economies and economic instruments, but ultimately what we were seeing in the NFT space was like, over and over again, we would hear the words, the market sets the price, the market sets the price, the floor price is here, so on and so forth. And to us, there was just something interesting about potentially experimenting with how engagement and data and like human social behavior fosters and fuels and changes the way that you're able to show up in a secondary marketplace. And so, this idea that we could mix the metamorphic and evolutionary nature of an NFT and then get people directly to engage and feed it, behavior that would ultimately force it to change. And that, once it did, that it would be more visually complex, or that it would come with more benefits in the community that would increase the value of your NFT. And so when you go and you try and flip it, if you flip it when you first bought it and it hasn't like blossomed in any way, then, that's one price, one valuation. But if you go and you engage with it and you nurture it and you give it whatever it is that it needs in order to blossom, then that's a different valuation entirely. And that's actually like, it's not you being part of the market that set the price, but rather it's you having a direct injection of sovereignty into like the value of your asset over time. And so we thought that was also a particularly exciting opportunity to sort of showcase like the sovereignty of individuals in the macroeconomic spectrum of the NFT market. And so that was also something that I thought was particularly engaging. And then, as Shaun mentioned, the team grew, the vision grew, everyone made it better. And what we ended up with is a 10,000 unique NFT collection. They're interesting in several ways. The first way is that they're connected to the Amazon in real time. So what this means is that whatever is happening in the Amazon at any given point in time, if it's sunny daylight, if it's dusk, if it's sunset, if it's nighttime, you get to see the skylight change across your NFT. If you are looking at weather events, so for example, if it starts raining in the Amazon, then it starts raining in your NFT. If it's sunny in the rainforest, it's sunny in your NFT. And the third thing that we synchronized besides skylight and weather was sound. So what you're listening to is an accurate reflection of what happens in the rainforest at that particular time. So it's synchronized completely to the Amazon. And what we really wanted to create for people was not just something visual that you could appreciate about a rainforest, but an experience that could be completely immersive and truly emotionally connect you to the rainforest, because it is such a really beautiful ecosystem. It's one of the oldest ecological ecosystems in the world, in fact. The second thing that makes it interesting is that it is metamorphic. And so, what ends up happening is that when you first acquire your NFT, it comes as like a baby plot almost. The flowers haven't blossomed; they're still buds. The trees are little, seedlings, and it's all just like a baby that needs to be nurtured, similar to a Tamagotchi or a Digipet. If you sort of think back to older references. And then once you start engaging with the cause of rainforest protection, once you show up for the cause of rainforest protection, then the NFT starts changing and it starts blossoming, and it goes through other stages of just complete like visual changes. So you start seeing the flowers blossom, you start seeing growth in the trees, you might see some illumination depending on your rarity pool. You might see some elements in that metallicize depending on your rarity pool. So it just becomes a lot more visually complex over time the more that you engage with it. And so the last component that makes it interesting is that it's completely multidimensional. So as Shaun mentioned, we were curious about turning it into a toy that you could use in many ways. So it's, turn the sound on and it's meditative. It's artful and collectible. It's a utility pass to community events. And we've also worked with a company called Madbricks to develop a game. And so the more that you play the game, the more that you're able to move toward this metamorphosis. Now, here's the fun part about it is that, the work of rainforest, one of the other fun parts about it.
Listen, at
The
some point,
fun part
I'm
about
thrilled.
it.
You keep going because like I talk too much in these things, and I'm like, Lucia, you got this. Like I'll
I
just
got
go take a
it.
nap.
I'll answer all the questions. No, the fun part that I just love, I love this component of it, which is, the work of rainforest. Like I've been involved in the cause of rainforest protection for a really long time. I'm super connected to them because I grew up in a country that has the largest rainforest area in Central America, and it's just a cause that's always been very important to me. And it's very complex work to actually protect them. We currently have about 6% of the Earth's surface covered in rainforest, and this is decreasing very rapidly. And so it requires arduous work to protect it. And so we wanted to reflect and respect that work through our project. So one of the interesting elements about this is that if you stop engaging with your Eternals plot, it actually regresses back to its basic state. So you have to continuously demonstrate your commitment to rainforest protection, play the game, engage with the community, learn about rainforest protection, donate to rainforest partnership or chosen charity. And then that will just continue to feed the metamorphosis. But the second that you stop, it just goes to show, like, it'll wilt backwards and it'll just go back into its basic state. So it's a really exciting project. I haven't even gotten into the impact of the project yet, but I'll let you ask me that question eventually.